you're new to pool and practicing the basics, or a more experienced player performing drills to improve your shot making and positional play, the Drill Partner is perfect for you.
Well, Mike, how are you, buddy?
I've been better.
Been better?
Yeah. I mean, we all heard about Mika this morning, and um, yeah, not an easy day.
Yeah, I can imagine. I can imagine. It's yeah, I don't know where to begin, Mike. I'll let you kind of uh, fill us in if you got any information, and
Well,
I know you
Mika,
recently did an article with them as well or a cover with Billiards Digest, and so
yeah,
um, yeah, I'll let you kind of have the floor, man.
yeah. Well, no, I'm glad we were able to do that piece, Mike Effner's amazing piece on Mika's battle. I'm glad we were able to do that. I'm glad he was around long enough to read it, and I know he really appreciated, loved the story. He loved telling the story, um, and battled colon cancer since he was diagnosed late, like December of 23, and was doing really pretty well for a while. But you're not going to outrun that, and he fought as hard as he could fight. Because that's who Mika was. I mean, he was that way at the table. I mean, if you look at social media today, um, all the posts about him show how close he was with so many people. He was everywhere, and he knew everyone, and he hung with everyone, and he was so passionate about life and about pool. And that's the way he approached everything. That's the way he approached the disease as well. Um, and he fought it as hard as he could. I mean, he was one of those guys who was really strong-minded. He was very, he was very studious about the power of the mental power that you can have over circumstances or over yourself, over your body, whatever. He was a warrior in that sense. I mean, he ran marathons, and he just trained because he wanted to run the New York City Marathon, and he ran the New York City Marathon, and 3.5, 4 hours somewhere, pretty good, real running time, and was always physically fit. But we knew him. I mean, he burned the candle as good as anybody. And he just had all of life. He was, very smart, cultured, all those things. He was passionate and stubborn and frustrating, and everybody who knew him went through all these kind of battles with him. It's like you rolled your eyes as much as you laughed with him, because that's just the way Mika was. Mika was he was very open. He was very out. And he was a great guy to hang around with. On the pool table, he was fierce, because that's the way he approached everything. He was fun to watch. You and I have talked about this a million times. He was not a fan of safety play. He was aggressive. He was a great shot maker. He was fun to watch. He wore his emotions on his sleeves. If he was winning, if he was losing, he was snapping his cue. And he just he was a guy that you wanted to follow during a tournament and go watch his matches. And he had one of the great runs ever, the late part of the 2000s. I mean, he came over here. I first met him. It was probably like 98 or 99, when he was just kind of getting rolling. A good European player. Moved to New York, early 2000, and that's where he stayed. And that's when the game really picked up. 2001, he won the World Nine Ball Championship in Cardiff, and beat Ralph, I believe, in the final. And he was only 27 at the time. he was young, and then for the next 5 or 6 years, like his life, like his personality, it was a roller coaster. Everything highs and lows with Mika. There was no in between. He was either winning something or, he wins the world championship, and later on that year reaches the final of the U.S. Open, and Corey beats him 11-0. that was one that hung with him for a long time. Then he plays in the Mosconi Cup, has a chance to run out to give Europe the huge upset win, and absolutely screws up the end of what should have been the match clinching game, and your U.S. ends up tying and retaining the cup. A couple years later, he MVP of the Mosconi Cup and a European win. In 2008, comes back, and wins the U.S. Open that he had wanted to win. That was still when the U.S. Open was the biggest, toughest tournament on the planet. Yep. And he wanted to win that from 2001 on. That's all he wanted to do was win the U.S. Open. He finally did it then in 2009, he comes to Bill, loses his first match. This is when it was double elimination all the way to the final. First match, wins 13 in a row. And in those days, 13 in a row meant the last 2 days you were playing from the minute you woke up until 2.
You earned it, yeah.
Yeah, and you earned it, and he did. He ended up winning that one, 30, and then later that year won the World 10-ball championship for a title. So, that's why he was Billiard Digest Player of the Decade, for that decade, in large part because of that 2008, 2009 run that he went on that was just ridiculous. So, yeah, he was a great talent, fun to watch, interesting guy, was always, he was always there. He was always ready to play, always ready to go out, always ready to whatever you wanted to do. He was up for it. So yeah, Mika was, a singular talent in many ways.
Yeah. What prompted that interview recently, Mike, or that cover for Billiards Digest?
Well, he was relatively open on social media about the battle he was going through and how he was attacking it, and his fish spirit, and he was such strong mind that it was a story that he didn't mind sharing and telling what he's going through and how tough it is. And so he was all for it. Great New York photographer Larry Busaka did the cover for that. It will always be one of my favorite Billiard Digest covers ever.
All those things are very accurate and very much who he was and who he is. And like his positive mentality is one that I'll always just hold on to because, even when talking with Mika or talking about him or talking with him or whatever over the last few years, like, he was going through it, sure, but like Mika still wanted to be Mika. He still wanted to be the Iceman. He still wanted to be a full-time professional player. He still wanted to go out there and just do what he loved to do, which was compete. And I'll never forget, Mike, we were in Vegas this year, and I was huddled up over there at the Lucasi booth quite a bit, and I remember walking to the other side of the arena where the players were at, and I stopped into the TV table and I'm walking down like the bleachers, and then I just see Mika, and I'm like shocked because Mika did not look great then. He looked like he had just went through it, but like if Mika, that like he doesn't want to talk about that shit. Like he wants to talk about positivity and focusing on forward and high spirits. And I'll never forget like one of his Facebook posts and it was right around that same time where he was like, and by the way, I know I look like I lost a lot of weight, and he just wanted to like get that out of the way. He doesn't want sympathy. He's a fighter, and he was an inspiration. Yeah. I've said this many times.
He would go through chemo, and then a week and a half later he'd go play in a tournament and play at still a pretty high level. He beat Josh last year in a match. So, uh, he didn't slow him down. That was kind of his mind, kind of his thing all along. He talked about even the story. He told himself that every day he was going to pull his ass out of bed and do something. He was not going to get that. I just don't have it today. I'm going to just stay here because he was afraid he'd never get back up. And so he just kept climbing up and after it. And that's who he was. So, it was not a great, year and a half for him, but
Yeah.
he got more out of that year and a half than most people facing what he faced. And that's, again, just the way he is.
Yeah, I remember whenever news had came out, and I messaged him, and we had a little bit of a rapport prior to, but not a lot. And I didn't know how he would. I'd never reached out under those kind of circumstances, Mike. You know what I mean? Like, hey, I'd like to talk to you
Yeah, right.
about what you're going through, and you don't know how people are going to take it or how they're going to feel about it. And Mika, to his credit, was just I'm game, I'm in, and he still put. I was looking back at the video this morning, and he still had on like his jersey, for the interview, like always professional. And Mika was
Yeah.
always a sharp dresser, and that was one thing. If you saw him, whether in the
Yeah,
arena or out, he
yeah,
was looking the part. Yeah. And but I'll never forget, like, when we were doing that interview, like, how we'll talk before we go live for a couple minutes. Most time I'm just like, let's hop in it and just kind of embrace it. But I'll never forget when he came on the screen, kind of similarly, I was like, oh man, like, I didn't realize, that was like the first time that I had seen him post announcement where it was like, holy shit, like he's, you know, he's underneath it. And but then you talk to him, and like you mentioned about playing the tournament, I mean, he was telling me a story how he was in Japan with Oi, and Oi was the one who was telling him, hey, you need to go see a doctor. And he goes to the doctor, kind of gets the news like that, hey, there's a pretty good chance something serious is going to come of this. And then that same day, he's out there, battling through round 4 of a
yeah,
monster tournament. And then, but like, that's just what he loved to do. That's who he
yeah,
was,
yeah. Yeah,
and
he didn't have any quit in him, that's for sure.
no, no. I was shocked this morning, Mike, whenever I saw the thing. And I was actually I woke up this morning and I seen in Facebook Messenger where our good friend Boji had messaged, and she was like, is it true? And that's the first message that I saw this morning when I woke up. And then I, of course, open up Facebook, and I'm just like, oh man, like, you know, we knew he was going through it again, but we just kind of
Yeah,
take
he
for
had
granted,
gone.
or maybe we hope that he was just going to keep on
Yeah,
persevering.
yeah, he had gone back into the hospital a week ago, and we corresponded for a couple days later, part of last week. And I kind of knew then that this was kind of the end game. He
Yeah.
was, his body, certain parts of his body were starting to shut down. He was having problems with his lungs, things like that. And he was, he was fighting.
Yeah.
Kept believing that he'd recover from this and fight the next battle. But it was, kind of foreboding at that point. So
Where was he, Mike?
I'm sorry,
Where was he?
in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, just a real shame. I don't know much about detail of who was with him toward the end. I know he had a lot of really close friends in New York who were taking really good care on his behalf. His good friend Emily was coming up from Louisiana a lot to see him, and so hopefully he was surrounded by a lot of friends because that's what you want.
Mika was a big reason why a lot of people play pool, was a big reason why a lot of people got into loving pool as well. And we've said this many times as we like dissect professional pool. We're doing this show, but it's like he's one of a kind, and his style of play was one of a kind. He was unapologetically himself, which I just love, and in a world in which like you have to be so aware of every move and very deliberate. Mika was just he was going to go forward, and whether he was on the table or no matter what he was dealing with or whatever, and he was just going to be himself, take it or leave it. And sometimes it rub people the wrong way, but like his competitive spirit, you couldn't deny, and it was always there no matter what. Even in his fight with cancer, it was just like there was never this, like in talking to him, there was never this quit or kind of like give up in speaking with him, because he just knew he was going to get through it. He just knew like
Right.
that's the only option, and you got a pretty healthy workout routine, Mike, and take good care of yourself. But like, you know how it is, man. You get up in the morning and some days you don't want to get up, and some days it's cold and you're tired and you're, all these things. And Mika didn't want to have excuses,
Yeah, no, he was he didn't he didn't shut down too often. I mean, he was always working on his mind, working on his body, working on his game, and if he wasn't doing that, he was working on a nice dinner someplace and a really nice glass of wine someplace, because he liked
Yeah.
the nice things in life for sure, and he
Yeah.
was very image conscious. He was always very high style. Yeah, it was always fun to be with. And again, he'd always hit you with something that would make you roll your eyes. You're like, "Oh, this is Mika."
Yeah.
But it was always just hang around with.
Yeah. Yeah. Whether it was on the table and being a fan of him, or off the table and being able to enjoy his company, he left a lasting impression over a world full of people. And you see that today, like you mentioned on social media, seeing, guys like Ronnie and legends of the game, whether it's current champions, past champions, teammates, coaches, whatever. And you just realize like just his footprint that he had on this industry, and I don't think like, and Mika just did it by being Mika. Like I don't think that was
Right.
his thought. He was going to be him. And everywhere you looked, whenever you saw him, he was just a battler, and an absolute fighter. I'm going to miss him a lot, Mike. I really admire his fight and his spirit. And, when I remember whenever all that shit had happened and everything came out, he had that Iceman strong, and I wear that shirt all the time whenever I work out, and like I mentioned about those mornings when you don't want to get up, it's like, he got up, he kept on going, and, he took care of himself, and unfortunately, it was his time. And so, like Muhammad says, Sisu, his attitude, even like during and leading up to it, and over the last couple of years, was to be inspired as well, Mike. You know what I mean? Like he just, I don't know too many people that would have that same disposition and that same mentality dealing with all the shit he had to deal with, and
And that's what one of the things that came through, I thought, in Mike Geffner's article with him was, inspiring other people just by his attitude and his strength and his mental strength and how you approach things. And he has a lot of lessons to learn in there from him.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you going to remember about him, Mike, most?
For me, I'll remember the Mosconi Cups in the 90s. He was a big part of those early years for Europeans when they were getting mopped up pretty much every year. But, you could see the fight in him. And, when the tide started to turn in the 2000s, he was right there.
Yeah.
He changing culture of European players, and he was a warrior, and led that team a lot of those years. He was because he was so emotional and so passionate, whatever. He helped the team a lot. I'll remember that, and I'll remember all that. I'm get away from the tournament and go out someplace and have a good meal and drink, and he loved to do that as much as anybody.
Yeah.
You know, we were posting all their selfies with Mika. I was afraid to do that because it would look like we had a glass in our hand every time we met. But
That's
you know,
unlike
that
you,
was
Mike.
but that was part of, you know, that he was a really fun, interesting guy to just sit around and talk to because he was, you know, pretty cerebral and colored and liked to talk about a lot of different topics. You know, you just wasn't just going to pull out, you know, napkins and draw table diagrams. So I like that about him. We could talk about a lot of other things. So he was a man of pretty good substance.
Yeah, you saw that. I mean, hell, I remember looking through some photos and whatever else, and it was like you would see him in, you know, a world championship in Cardiff. You would see him at a, you know, middle of the country in Michigan tournament as well. You know, he was all over the place. And you mentioned the player of the decade. Well, like, you know, so Billiards Digest, it still is, but at the time was huge for me. I used to, that's how I caught up on news, you know, and seeing that from at the time, my favorite player, you know, was like pretty cool. It was like, okay, good, Mika. It better fucking be Mika, you know, and he was one of the few guys that like I always wanted to meet because he was just so cool. You know, he made pool cool, but he wasn't trying to be cool. I don't think he was just being himself, and by default, he just had it. You know what I mean? And um,
Yeah, he had that charisma and that cool factor to him, and yeah, he was, and that was apparent early on. I mean, he was on a cover in 1998, and the reference is he pulls next leading man because he just you knew then. I mean, he was like,
yeah,
you know, 23, 24. You're like, yeah, this guy's it.
yeah, and in a pool world where like there's a lot of nerds in the pool world, Mike. You know, people are afraid to be themselves, or they're afraid to ruffle feathers, or they're afraid to show personalities. They don't want to upstage anyone or disrespect anyone. And Mika didn't do it for any of that. You know, he didn't do it for like to get a competitive edge on you, but he was not going to be afraid to be fired up and be passionate and to be genuine about whatever it is that he was doing. You know, whether it was competing or whether it was dressing up for that 9 o'clock dinner, you know, it didn't matter. He was going to have his best foot forward and was going to be ready
Yeah,
to go. And um, I genuinely enjoyed seeing him every time we would go anywhere. And he was always a real pleasure to talk to. He was a great ambassador for the game, for his spirit, for his fight, for his style of play. You know, I loved in a world where like all these Europeans just come one rail position and tangent lines and you know they play too good. Mika was not afraid to let it rip. He was not afraid to go two rails. He was not afraid to you know let the cue ball move, and I absolutely just adore that about him as well, just from like the way that he plays pool, you know. And one of the guys that it reminds me of is Chua, you know, and Chua talks about how important that he was to his career early on as well, and how much he looked up to him and his idol and all these things. And but it's like if you see Chua play, he's got that Mika in him. You know, he's got that
yeah,
same firepower in him, Mike. You know, and I absolutely love that about him. Yeah, it's a sad day, man. It's a real sad day in the
yeah,
pool world for sure. I didn't. Obviously, I know you know he was going through it. I I always felt like I don't want to say awkward hitting him up about it because I just we talk about energy and like the things you want to give your energy to or focus on or acknowledge. And like even whenever I seen him there in Vegas this year, like I said, I didn't want to like be like, oh man, are you okay? Like no, Nika was
yeah,
he 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 was hauling ass coming back from the restroom, getting back in the match, you know, and like your human reaction is, hey, you need anything? But Mika just wanted to go play pool. You know what I mean? Like that's but you know what? He would still stop and say hello, you know, show you some love, and then and just go about his business. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say, Mike. There's so many things, and it he was
yeah. No, he'll be, like you said, like I said, you know, you look on social media, you see just how much he will be missed because you know he was with he was just he was like a player of the people. I mean, he was just always everywhere. I mean, you
yeah
can't. Every person who posts something's got five selfies with Mika at some random place, someplace, and you're like, man, this guy was everywhere. I see Marcus is on here. Marcus, I feel sorry for you, Marcus. I know you and Mika were really tight back in those earlier Moscone days, and went through a lot together. And what you posted today about Mika was really cool. You raised a good kid right there. Mika did have a great and I know you guys. My heart goes out to you, buddy.
It's been a tough year, Mike. I mean, it seems like every year is like that, but like, you know, some things you expect, and some things you kind of see coming, and then it's like some things you're just like, oh man, you know.
It's been a tough year. There's I think the third Hall of Famer this year that we've lost. So
Antonio's comment on there. It's where I like to be when I'm playing. I'm at the table. I forget the problems I'm going through. That was like, that's who he was, man. And that was a crazy thing, like, of everything, talking to him, like, after going through finding out about cancer and all these things. Mika always wanted to go back to, and whether he was getting proposed the question or he was just living his life, Mika always wanted to go back to just playing pool, just hitting balls, have some normalcy, and that's, pool is very therapeutic in that aspect. You can get real lost and found all at once, you know, when you're at the table. And I can remember so many times personally of just whether I'm wanting to celebrate something or if I'm going through it, and you can always identify with it, is like, I just want to go, you go get torched on the pool table or whatever. Like, it's very it's easing on the soul, you know. And even when you spoke to him, he was like, I just, you know, you're asking him about how his results went or how his doctor appointment went or whatever. And he's just like, yeah, you know, I had an appointment like at 2 last week. And then you know, my match was about 2:30, and man, I missed that 2-rail position and blah, blah. And I'm just like, well, wait a minute. Like, but his energy was going to be on Mika Immonen, the pole player, you know, and that's what defined him. That's who he is.
When I saw him in Green Bay in July, he was out there for the Women's World Championship, and he was hanging around and commentating, doing different things, and he was staying. And I told him, you know, about when was he going back. He said, I think I'm gonna stay around another day, and he pushed it to the limit where he flew back on, I think, a Monday morning, and landed at like 12 and had chemo at 1. And not basically, he literally went from the airport with his suitcases hospital for treatment.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, he wasn't leaving anything on the table. He was going to milk
formality. That was like an inconvenience for him. You know, like he knew he had to do it, but like he had shit to do. You know, he had a life to get to. He had a life to go and live and celebrate and enjoy and competing and all these things that just embody him and are why you appreciate the man, why you respected the man, why you fell in love with the game or whatever. It's like you see it everywhere, and it sucks whenever like the pool community kind of comes together for something like this. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, but it's a tough thing, you know. Knowing Mika would want to just.
This is our therapy. This is the way we all get through it. This is the way, you know, you help Marcus get through it. This is the way you help me get through it. This is the way we all help each other get through it. You know, because it hurts.
Yeah. I remember seeing him like at the Hall of Fame induction, and like you see a lot of people who were there, and then you notice people who aren't there as well. But like Mika was proud about it. You know, Mika was proud to be in that spot. Mika, it was something. Go ahead.
Yeah, he hung out with my family. I sent him a picture last week that my family was praying for him. It was a picture of him and my mother, my brothers and sisters. I wasn't even in the picture. It was a picture of him with my family at the Hall of Fame banquet. You know, just all like chumming and hanging out, and they loved meeting him, and he was one of those guys. He told me when I saw him in July, he's like, how much I enjoyed meeting your family and hanging out with your brother and whatever. That's just who Mika was. He was just, you know, he was all about meeting new people, talking about new stories, talking about new things, living new adventures, everything. So that's just the way he was wired. Yeah.
We're gonna miss you, Mika. We love you. You know, and we'll keep on thinking about you and keep on celebrating you. But in Mika fashion, Mike, I think he would want us to talk about pool, and I don't know
Yeah,
what's best
yeah.
transition.
We talked
But
competitive pool.
yeah, that's what he would want anyway, And right before we went live, I posted a photo on Windows Open, and you got a chance to talk with the current world 10 ball champion, and I'll kind of start there. Mike, give me your takeaways from talking with Ko Ping Chung, and when fans can expect that interview to drop.
Yeah, well, we're doing Billiard Digest live Thursday of this week, and so I was able to, through Mike's help, able to hook up with the brothers in Vietnam. They were on their way to, if they're not already there, in Da Nang for the Perry Open, and just talked to him a little bit about his win. He had just turned 30 a couple days before the tournament started, so he still looks like he's 12,
Yeah.
like he's 40. So he's a great champion. He just kind of sneaks up on you at those tournaments, and you're like, oh yeah, of course he's still in it, and of course he's got a shot to win it. And so he took out Carlo Beato twice. Both losses in that tournament Carlos suffered were to Ping Chung Ko. And obviously we did the show when it got down to the semifinals and completely jinxed Beato and Shane. By talking about how much we were looking forward to Beato Shane final.
Don't say me. You.
No, you. but it wasn't surprising. The little Cole.
No.
And it's his second World 10 Ball Championship. So, he's a winner. Just such a solid player, so steady. It was a good tournament. It was a good format. Say what you want about it. It led to some exciting matches there at the end. A semifinal between Kazakis and Shing that went into 13th round of the shootout. Neither guy. I think Kazakis rattled a couple in, but other than that, there was one pure shot after the next from these guys. So. And I asked Alex about it. I asked about how nervous he was. And he said, you're nervous that after a while, we're both just making them, and you just stop. At the beginning, you're thinking, maybe he'll miss this one win, or maybe, whatever. And he said after a while, you're just like, forget it. Just keep shooting, because you just got to wait and see what happens. And so that was, do I love the semifinal of a world championship decided on penalty kicks? No. But it is what it is, and it was still a great tournament, and great players all were still there toward the end, and it was a great finish. I enjoyed the tournament.
I want to just elaborate on that, Mike, because I give Alex a lot of shit on the show at times, and I think he's got some rattle in him, but he showed some bottle, as the Europeans say, and that shootout with Shane when you're playing in SVB, right? And all that SVB is going after his first World 10 Ball Championship. You're in the semifinals. You're going back and forth with them toe to toe. And while I'm kind of with you, as far as it being decided on penalty, but you can't deny the excitement and the pressure, and you feel the pressure as a fan when you're sitting there and you're watching it, whether at home or in the arena, and you can only imagine what those guys are going through, being out there on center court, you know what I mean? And you're playing for a spot in a world championship final. Like, this is what you dreamed of your whole career, you know what I mean? And so, for Alex to kind of, to handle that, in the way that he did against Shane, you got to just help but have more respect for him, than before, if you didn't already. And even if you did, it's even more so, and so, kudos to Alex for a great tournament as well, Mike, and especially for him being a dad and all those things. It's like you can't help but just admire him and just really appreciate what he did to get there. And it's not easy to do, like, you got every excuse in the world to go unfold and not show up and shrink against Shane and all these things. And like, it takes a certain kind of man to do what he did, and he did it. So congratulations to Alex on a great tournament as well. So, But on the note of the, I mean, we talked about, well, you talked about how we dogged the prediction for sure. I know what I was rooting for, and I'll stand by it. But like you
Yeah,
mentioned, Ko Ping Chung is a monster player. We've seen him demolish tournaments. We've seen him demolish Big Brother. We've seen him demolish tough opponents. And you think about like consistency like when you start to reflect on things, whenever you start to realize like how great people are like over the last few years, and he beat Josh Filler in a final, beats Alex Zakis in a final, but beats Carlo twice. That's not easy to
yeah.
do. Like it's tough to beat Carlo twice in a career, let alone twice in one tournament.
Pitches,
Especially as a
pitches
defending
a shutout
champion.
against pitches a shutout against Yap in the semifinal of the U.S. Open.
Yeah,
He's it's always kind of interesting when we talk about pre-tournament predictions, and it's like, okay, where do you go with the Cobras? Because you always have a feeling one of them's gonna, be right there at the end. Which one is it going to be? Because it seems like they take turns over who's gonna dominate an event. But so you tend to kind of semi forget about them a little
yeah.
bit when you get into that.
Well, because of the other one, that's the problem. And
Right,
I
that's
mean,
the thing.
it's a
That's
good
what I
thing and
mean.
a bad thing.
Yeah. So the easiest thing would just say, if I'm looking for a final eight, I like Cole.
Yeah.
And just, I don't know which one it's going to be, but it's going to be one of them.
Oh yeah,
Right?
final eight, lock it up for sure. I would for sure bet on the final eight. It's a lock, Mike. But it's crazy to think about
Yeah.
because it was funny as you were recording the interview. In my head, I was thinking, and I kind of want to ask him like, who's the better brother? And in typical Pinozo fashion, of course, he asked him that to close out the interview, and Pinyi was
We're
like,
not getting off the hook there.
Pinyi was like me, and Ping Chung was like me, and but you can legitimately make an argument for either one of them having a better year than the other. And we talk about Mosconi Cup, and now for the Asians, it's Reyes Cup, and the eye test tells me Ping Chung's had a better season, but the results show Pinyi's had a better season, and so I think we take either one of them on any team on earth, it seems like Pinyi's going to make it over Ping Chung, but yeah, no, he's an absolute just destroyer, and his consistency level has been through the roof. And thinking back, like on when I started watching Asian players play pool and online, all these things, it's like, man, they've been doing that for well over 15 years now, and it's crazy to think that or around 15 years. But it's crazy to think about him being only 30 because I'm like, man, I've been watching him for a while, Mike. I mean, a good
Yeah.
long while, and so for him to
Yeah.
only be 30 is crazy. 2 world championships, amongst other accomplishments. And yeah, it's he's also an inspiration as well, Mike. And it was cool just seeing him he gave some real, I don't want to you guys have to check out the interview on BD Live because there was some pretty funny responses on there, some pretty sincere ones. And congratulations to you, Mike, because I know it's not easy when you got to deal with language barriers and all these things. And so always a special time.
Yeah, it was good. It was fun.
What were some of your
Now
other
we got,
takeaways from the tournament, Mike?
a lot of interesting names there toward the end. Marco Teucher, Yap was, he was still fighting there. You got a quarterfinal. You were wondering whether he was going to take another run at it. Oliver
Would have been
Solnacki,
surprised.
who won the World Games 10 ball. Mark Estiola. There's always going to be some Filipino surprise in the in the final 16, final 8. Yeah, it was really good event.
From the content that was put out through there, from all the matches being streamed, I thought it was one of the best received tournaments from a fan standpoint. I know me and you were dealing with the time difference, as are a lot of fans on this side of the world. But if you were up during that time, you pretty much had a free choice of what to watch, when to watch, however you wanted to watch it, whether it was on YouTube or Facebook, or I'm sure you can bring up some other, whether it's TikTok or whatever, you can find what you're looking for, which is just great, especially in 2025, as we talk about pool kind of coming to the modern age and making it as widely available as possible for fans. It's they really did an outstanding job there, Mike. And I got a chance to talk to Vincent again. I'll try to post that interview on the YouTube page. But like I asked him point blank, I said, listen, how do you like you can't go backwards from here. You know, like you can't go behind a paywall from here. You can't like only have one TV table. And he's like, look, Vietnam is just different, you know, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he's like, Vietnam is just different. And, you know, they got a real strong team of people and they were willing to stream as many tables as possible. I think they did almost every single table. So, but like if you're a fan, you know, you got to just thoroughly appreciate and enjoy what they did for you this past week out there in
Yeah,
Vietnam, Mike.
lot to watch, lot to take in, a lot available. So yeah.
What were you going to say earlier, Mike? You were going to get on something that I interrupted you.
Just about all the stuff coming up. You know, obviously we got Hanoi World Ball, starting with the Perry Open now. So they go from 10 ball to 9 ball to 8 ball to 9 ball. It's kind of a little ping pong going on. Yeah, let's go. So it's going to be a busy month in Asia. That's for sure.
Well, I like it because it gives us a break from this same old exhausted storyline and seeing the differences in play and the break and who's going to come through, who are the usual suspects, who's going to be the unknown, who's going to be the Cinderella, all these things, and you're going to get some variation because of the different disciplines, which is great. Da Nang and that room, the Perry room, is unbelievable, and I can't think of a nicer pool room. Although, like, it's so from the conditions, the table, the food, the service. I think there's like over 100 tables in that one room. You go upstairs and you think like you've walked into like pool heaven, Mike.
Yeah, right.
And as you're walking up the stairs, there's like a lounge area. And every time, whenever I would show up there would just be like, AJ Manis there and Carlo there and, some Vietnamese stars there and probably a couple of like Mosconi Cup champions sitting there just hanging out. You know what I mean? And you're walking past them to go see the action, and that's how deep the tournament is. That's how awesome the tournament is. It's such a beautiful place. Like Vietnam is a special place. Obviously, you can see that from the fans and all these things, but like, the care and the attention that they pay towards the players and the conditions and all those things are top shelf, Mike. It's going to be a great tournament once again.
Yeah, it should be a great tournament there. And then, like say, just a lot coming up with the Hanoi Open and World 8 Ball.
What are your thoughts on that heading into these events that are coming up next week, Mike?
In terms of field?
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
You know what? I'm looking at it. The Hanoi field is really pretty good, and both fields are really pretty solid. It's not like one's got everybody and the other's got nobody. So it should be two pretty good events. I mean, the Hanoi field, the Cole brothers are in Hanoi, Federer's in Hanoi, Jason's in Hanoi. Then you got World 8 Ball. You'll have, Shane will be over there. Filler will be over there. Kazakis, Dennis Grave, the Austrians, the kind of usual suspects for the WPA events as well. So, I don't think fans of either one are going to feel totally cheated. There's some good pool about to be played.
Yeah, I don't want to say cheated, but I don't think it's like, I think personally, especially as I reflect from last year, like there were so many storylines going into this week, and what would be be next week, and there were
and how they
say that again,
how they impact other things like Reyes, Mosconi, things like that.
Yeah, and little did we know, like all the repercussions that players were going to be facing as a result of what went down, a year ago. There were guys who were literally at airports about to get on flights, not sure what they were going to do. I saw a couple players land in Hanoi last year only to skip the event, because of there were guys who I saw leaving Da Nang at the airport still like, I'm not sure if I'm going to play or not. And I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but like, these were players who were, obviously we all know who was there, but like these are players that are have potential for making moves. You know what I mean, on lists. And so, um,
Yeah.
and in this year, and whether you were looking at the Asian side of it, the European side of it, or the American side of it, there were just a ton of stories going into this week, at least on the Matchroom side of things. Now this year, there's just not for me. You know,
It's just kind of, the water kind of muddied. It's not sure what to make.
yeah, I mean, like it's these fabricated storylines and behind the scenes things that are kind of like I feel like I'm getting robbed on potential storylines. If I'm being honest with you, that's
Okay.
that's my like first thought on it because of whatever reason, right? But like, um, obviously, like we notice who's not there, but then if you were to really think about why they're not there, it's a whole different lens to kind of view it through. And so, look, Hanoi is very special. Hanoi is the fans are awesome, the atmosphere is incredible, and even during like the lull of the tournament, where like it's a Monday or whatever, during the day, it's like you still got a pretty decent sized crowd in there. And then especially as it finishes up, it just gets thicker and thicker, and like, you've been to sporting events your whole life, Mike, and I've been to different kinds of arenas, and like the roar is what I'll remember, Mike.
Yeah.
And hearing like Kopeny come out and the fans like chanting Ko, chanting for Jason, Chua. It's like you get these like goosebump type moments where it's just like this is what we deserve, you know,
Yeah.
as like a pool community and pool fans, but like the Vietnamese are the ones to show up and to just do it, and it's
There's some good crowds in Ho Chi Minh City as well. So yeah, they get out there and support for sure. And you know, Tuan Quoc Hong, he's Hanoi, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of crowd, because he made a pretty decent little run in Ho Chi Minh City, and the numbers were off the charts in terms of social engagement while he was playing.
yeah, yeah, and that's the reason why, like, if I'm picking Vietnam, right, or Huang or whoever, right, to like win a tournament to go deep or whatever, for me, like the impact on the sport is why I weigh that so heavily, because you see like you think it could be great. You see little blips on the radar, like when you start seeing those numbers like we've had last week, right? But then you know that, like, hey, listen, if you get a great market and a rabid fan base, like it's a pretty good combination, Mike. Of
Yeah,
just a spike, which we haven't seen before, or at least that I can remember, Mike, in doing all this. So, um, it's great to watch. Obviously, I'm going to be rooting for another Vietnamese player next week. I don't care who it is. I want to see that
yeah,
yellow and
go
red.
deep,
Yeah,
go deep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because they'll show up. And they're ruthless too. Those fans, like they can be true, toxic sports fans as well. But that comes with it. You know what I mean?
oh,
But like they'll fucking
I
cheer
mean,
for you, Mike.
they did not hide their emotions or their allegiances when Filler missed a couple times in that match against Wong. I mean, they were cheering uh, like someone had just won a tournament.
Yeah.
So it's good to see. It's a lot of fun.
I don't know what Indonesia is gonna bring, Mike. I don't. I wanted to go there this year, and obviously I'm here in the States, so like I didn't get to go out to Vietnam this year. But like it, and I was kind of wrestling with where am I gonna go, because I loved Hanoi. I know what I enjoyed last year, and I'm kind of stubborn, Mike. Where like I don't like change. And so my first reaction was to go to
Last year was a change, Mike.
what's that?
Last year was a change.
Yeah,
It was your first time in Vietnam.
it
So
well it was, but like
you
going into this year, Mike, and I'm
you're doing it this year.
yeah, I mean, thinking about like the players though, right? And like how they're wrestling with things. And I can only imagine, right? And these are guys like whether you're depending on what you're realistically trying to accomplish, right?
Right.
Whether you just want to go and compete and play pool and play for world championships or not piss people off or whatever. But like there was some tough decisions, and players are very much aware on what going there and interacting does to their brands and to their social media numbers and wanting to get those numbers pumped up as well. So like it's tough choices all the way around. Plus, from an exposure standpoint, what's going to give you the best outlook for your personal brand, right? Um, but yeah, I'm excited to see how the fans show up there in Indonesia, Mike. I'm excited to see, who's going to be there on the tail end of that tournament. The ending of the Matchroom tournament in Hanoi, I'll be intrigued on that, but like I'll just be intrigued from like just another tournament standpoint, if I'm being honest with you, because there's just nothing like nobody I'm looking at to make any waves, nobody I'm looking at to make any kind of leaps, you know. They've kind of like they've already, it seems like the roadmap is kind of laid out already in terms of teams that are going to be on there. And I know like they're overplaying these angles and all these things. And I saw on social media like Mosconi Cup and Ryder Cup and all these things, and I'm just like, yo, man, I get it. Like you're trying to promote a fight, but it's like it seems that you got your head under the sand quite a bit as well, Mike.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we still have time for these events to actually come off, and maybe they'll surprise us and be more engaging than we thought. It's certainly going to be interesting to see, if and when they name captains and wild cards and what kind of drama that produces. And so still a lot to be decided.
Yeah, I think, well, we'll save that for another day, but yeah, it's I'm trying to get Emily on the show. Maybe we'll try to get her on again. I'll reach out and see if we can get her on. Answer some questions, talk about a few things, especially heading into the Reyes Cup and into Hanoi. But in the meantime, Mike, it was a great week of pool. It was a tough start to the day, but here we are.
Yeah.
You got anything else before we get out of here, my man?
Nope. Appreciate the time. Appreciate being able to talk about Mika a little bit.
Yeah.
But he would be the first stage. The show goes on, rack the balls, let's break.
Yeah, for sure. And he's looking for a game up there. He's probably already hitting balls, and he'll be one of the last guys to leave for sure, and then go enjoy a good dinner, and then go right back to the table because that's just who he is. So we'll be thinking about you, Mika. We'll be praying for your friends and your family and the loved ones and everyone who you impacted over your short life. And God bless you. And hopefully you guys enjoy the show. I'm going to try to do more stuff over the next few days. So keep your notifications on. And we'll see all you guys real soon.